May the fourth be with you. I've come here to finish what you started. Celebrate the 20th anniversary of Perfect Dark by beating all the levels on Perfect Agent mode. I've come to finish what you started. I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Let the past die. Kill it if you have to. May the fourth be with you, everyone. Let's beat this level first before we move on. Oh, for the peeps wondering, yeah, it's a real Nintendo 64. From the, I don't know when I bought it. I know it wasn't in 1996, so it was later. So I think I at least picked up one by, I want to say 2005, 2006-ish. You know, at least by that time. Somehow I lost my copy of GoldenEye. I don't know if I sold it or it was probably a deal where I thought I could get it, you know. I thought I could trade it or retrade it back. You know, a lot of people do that when they're younger. They'll trade their CDs, they'll trade their albums, they'll trade their stuff, and then they realize, oh shit, this shit ain't coming back. I mean, yeah, you can get it online for sure. Like, I mean, people still sell this stuff, but as the years pass by, the 64 library will become increasingly rare, like the makers of this game and GoldenEye. And so when I started to look at GoldenEye online for eBay and stuff, you know, people in a pristine condition will be selling this stuff for, oh man, like, people would be selling it for like fucking, you know, $300. I mean, good God, who knows how, who knows how much they'll sell it for in the future. So, I think, oh man, smoke, bro. But yeah, like some stuff when it gets really rare, people are going to sell it for outrageous prices. So I think before it becomes way too rare, I'm going to buy like a pretty good amount of the Nintendo 64 library, especially certain games, especially GoldenEye for sure. I don't know if I'll buy 2 copies of that. Maybe a few copies of Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time, Star Fox, Donkey Kong, Mario 64 for sure. That's like a classic. Mario Kart. So if I'm ever like a millionaire, I'm gonna buy all that stuff. Now there is a guy in Texas. There's a guy in Texas that he has the biggest video game collection ever assembled. And I guess he started when he was young or something, like kind of like James Rolfe style. And he built up a pretty impressive collection. So you know, all that stuff might be worth something someday. Values can fluctuate, but if there's a legendary game, you know, people are going to go after it. So if something's rare, eventually people are going to go after it. So, you know, collectors. But I know if I wait 10, 20 years to get me Nintendo GoldenEye 64, that somebody they're going to jack up the price to like $2,000, something, you know, fucking crazy. And if you look at it, James Bond GoldenEye is one of the like most beloved video games of all time, basically. One of them, anyway. Besides Legend of Zelda, another classic is Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. So you have all those like legendary video games, and one of these days, somebody isn't going to ask you for $200. They're going to ask you for $2,000, and one day, you know, like 50 years later or something, somebody might say, hey, give me $10,000, give me $20,000. It'll get pretty inflated, pretty crazy, very, very quickly. Because the games would have been out of circulation so long. Oh no. The nail is faster now. Oh, shit. No. Oh my god. That was like a double. That was like a Bad Boys for Life or something. That was like big machine guns jumping out the corner. So, I mean, I don't expect my personal collection just, you know, Perfect Dark, and I don't have, you know, Mario, Zelda, I don't have GoldenEye, so I don't expect just my collection. All I have is Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, Blast Corps, and I have, in terms of the cartridges, I only have Blast Corps, which is not a popular game at all. Blast Corps, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, and Perfect Dark. And, okay, True Rock Dinosaur Hunter. All right, so that's about it. So in terms of like the biggest library, what I have, mostly I have something that is kind of worthless to people. I have a big VHS collection, which isn't really much of anything. So I think there's one inflated thing that I have that's going buck wild on the internet. It's from, I think it was 1984 to 1994, Disney released rare VHS tapes of Disney classics. And some of those, especially the high profile ones like Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, stuff like that, some of that stuff's going for like 10 grand on the internet. But a lot of like a lot of collectors are saying, you know, those are inflated values. They're not real. They're not based on, you know. Shit. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do. Now we already blew our cover, but we can. There we go. Sweet. We could turn off the alarm so there's not. Okay. We're not gonna get our double falcon, but now there's gonna be guards everywhere. I know. I might redo the level so we don't set up the alarm. Probably do that. Well, it's kind of an executive decision to do that because. Oh, that's good. So I have the Jungle Book. They're called Disney Black Diamond Editions.
You go on ahead, Joe. I'll secure the
So I didn't really meet any serious collectors when I was growing up. I guess the first serious collectors I started to meet in my teens, people that were really dedicated to it, especially to nerdy type things, and so the first thing I noticed was one of my friends, Jeff. He would his parents would get him for Christmas or his birthdays. They would give him old Star Wars toys, like vintage ones. They would collect. They would collect. Find them somehow. I guess through the internet, eBay or something. Some kind of early internet trade. I guess. Sounds like I'm talking about the Old West now. Like I'm like in the days when they used to trade animal skins or something. But in the early days of the internet trade, so he would acquire these. He would acquire these old Star Wars toys that, even back then when it was like 1995 or 1994, I was thinking to myself when he would get like a Han Solo from 1977 or something, maybe his parents paid 150 for it then. But now like a really pristine Han Solo would go for, especially from the vintage original Star Wars era, it seems like it would go for a lot of money now, like into the thousands. So, if he has like a vintage Emperor Palpatine or like a vintage Millennium Falcon or something like that, that's going to be a lot of money because they're rare. So. All right, cool. So we did survive it. We did it good. Okay, and we got the double Falcon 2. Oh, we got the double Falcon 2 before. Oh, did that take that shit away? No way. It took it away from me right when that was crazy, man. All right. Well, I'm going to proceed with the mission this time because my health is really good, and like, of course, I'll try to find another way to acquire weapons. But a very curious early collector was this guy I met named George, and so George was a very lonely kid. His dad owned a bar. I guess I don't know if his mom was dead, but certainly she wasn't around anymore. So maybe a divorce or something like that. So you had a lot of latchkey kids back in the day where their parents were at work, slaving away at the factory. Well, his dad, in this case, turned out to be a pub owner in Pasadena. And but he seemed like a really lonely kid, like a kid who could easily get into trouble, you know, like get into some dark magic or something crazy. You know? So he was just one of those kind of kids that was left by himself. I mean, he didn't become Jeffrey Dahmer or anything, but he was definitely a weird fucking person. He didn't mutilate animals or anything. He wasn't, you know, showing signs of psychopathy, but he was just a weirdo, you know. I guess he was more like I guess he'd be more accepted now. So it wasn't very acceptable, really, to be a nerd back in the 80s and 90s. Not really. I mean, people did play D&D, they did play video games, but definitely wasn't fashionable yet. It didn't really, nerd culture really didn't take a hold of society until, you know, later on. So at first it wasn't cool to be like, oh, I'm, like it was cool to be a music nerd because that's like rock and roll, that's like music. But if you were like a Star Trek, Star Wars, you know, comic book nerd, usually people would, you know, you would draw ire from people. So George was another collector. I'd say Jeff was, you know, kind of a fly-by-night kind of collector. His parents, you know, just for his birthday and because he loves Star Wars, they and they got him these rare Star Wars toys. And I hate this fucking level with a fucking big time passion. Just because I hate it doesn't mean it's gonna go away. It's like it's my least favorite level for a lot of reasons. So George was a comic book nerd. When he was into comic books, I said, okay, this is an acceptable level of nerdism.
You go on ahead, Joe.
Mainly, I knew it was a little off. I knew it was a little weird, but I knew his dad owned the local pub. And I know my parents went there, so he, you know, sort of had a status in society a little bit, you know. I think even one time he had a birthday party and he hosted it at his dad's pub, and I was like, oh wow, and it made him feel like really, it made him feel like kind of important. Like, my dad, you know, runs this. It gave him not like a sense of entitlement, but it gave him like, oh look, you know, my dad does all this stuff, and come check it out. So you can imagine like his 13th birthday, we went to the pub, and we're just, you know, ordering ice cream and stuff. But it's funny because we're at a bar and we're like 13 years old, so, you know, obviously we're not going to be getting drunk. But you know, it was a thought that counts. The thought that counts, I guess. My dad owned a club too in the early '90s on South Padre Island, and I went to teen night, and I was like, hey, you know, this is really cool. You know, my dad owns this club, and it's teen night. You know, there's no drinking or anything, but it's like, hey, it's a whole bunch of different teenagers everywhere. My peer group, and started talking to people and stuff. It was kind of fun. I don't think I didn't brag. I wasn't like George. I didn't brag like, hey, you know, my dad owns this club. I didn't, you know, use it to try to get laid or, you know, try to get some action or anything or get people to like me or anything. It wasn't like that at all. So I didn't give a fuck if people liked me or not, really. That's kind of not even really the point. Um, so George's dad owned the club, and I started to I started to I started to lose track of him when. Hello. Hey, hey. Oh, real good, real good. Uh huh. Like an electronic card. Oh, you might. Well, you could probably do that in Paint 3D. Yeah, yeah. It's Paint 3D, and then you can like, you know, take a picture of it of the card or something, and then you can draw on it. You can alter it with effects and stuff if you want to. So if you want to work on it when you come home, that's fine. Well, we can send the file to your email or something. You print it at work. Oh, well, maybe you have Paint 3D on your thing, so you can edit it. Uh, um, okay. Well, I mean, if you want to make a card, you can make a card, and then you can print it out at work or something. I mean, so what do you want to do? You want to? Okay. Well, if you need, yeah. Well, I usually use Paint 3D if I want to do a graphic with effects or play around. You know, so I mean, you can do text on Paint 3D too. If you wanted to design a card, you can do that. Oh, okay. 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 Uh, well, I'm sure there's a program for anything that you want to do. You know. Oh, yeah. Okay. 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 Sweet. All right. Hey, I love you too. All right. Okay. Okay. El Rincon? Mi Rancho. Oh, wow. Well, I guess, ooh, that, it's been a while since we had fajitas, unless, no way, Mi Rancho, man. Then, I'd rather just have some quesadillas than for Mi Rancho, or the enchilada dinner. Oh man. Well, I know no one likes that, so sour cream enchiladas is like my favorite thing to order from all the Mexican restaurants. So, oh, okay, all right, thanks. Okay, all right. That way you don't have to spend a fortune on Popsitos. Yeah, Mi Rancho I think tastes better. So, anyways, okay, all right, love you. Okay, bye. All right, let's go back to. I had to answer the personal call there. So then, okay, the story of George is, I guess they activated the fucking alarm again. Whatever. Bring it on. Shit. Okay. So if I shot these guys, where's their ammo at then? Don't tell me it went to the wall or some shit. Man, what a chip.
Hey.
Hey. Buttholes. Okay, so George was very nerdy, very strange, only child, no siblings. His dad was gone a lot, almost to an unhealthy extent. He was either out and about or he was at his club. And I don't think that was good for George, but, who am I to judge anybody's parenting style, like not being around to raise the kid. But I guess the latchkey kid thing phenomenon was something that was big in the 80s and 90s. If you didn't have your parents were off to work, and sometimes if you were of a certain age, you had to take care of yourself. I mean, kind of. I mean, your parents took care of your food and stuff, but a lot of people grew up without parents that were around, so they kind of left to their own devices. I think George was naughty. He was kind of deviant, but he wasn't the worst that were out there. They had a lot. They had people that were way worse than him. He was just middle of the road. He was just whatever. I lost contact with him. I think he started talking about. He started to get a little into some homosexual kind of behavior, some kind of deviant behavior, and then he also would. I called him one day, and he started talking about vampires and Dracula and stuff, and all that, and he wanted me to go like to this lake retreat with him or something, and like he was talking to some weird people about like vampire rituals, and I was like, I'm out of here. I was like, this guy is too weird. So at first he was okay. He was one of those people that seems okay. Seems like he's all right. And then later on, you're just kind of like, I think something's wrong with this guy. Yeah. Eventually, you figure it out. So I didn't really. I did not necessarily, fret when our relationship, when we were no longer friends. It wasn't like, oh man, I'm really gonna miss that person. That's too bad we had a falling out. No, it was more like, oh, thank God I'm not friends with that person. It was more of a relief thing. So if people think that I was sad when George and I were no longer friends, that's not how it was. So. It's more like, woo, a weirdo's out of our life. Oh. But at first, he seemed, like everything was checking out. It wasn't until later it got a little crazy. Got a little bit out of my comfort zone. Okay, so then. Shit. Oh, gotcha. All right, so what I was talking about, George was a collector. They used to have these things called comic book shops. They were everywhere. They were like comic book, like before everything was, there was no shops anymore. They used to have these things called comic book shops where all the comic book nerds would go to. They still have them, I think, somewhere, someplace. But they're not, they used to be everywhere. There used to be like in every shopping center, it'd be cards and games. There'd be people with sports cards of their favorite, guy, the favorite team, the favorite player, like let's say Michael Jordan, Nolan Ryan, et cetera, et cetera. So George was going a lot of places, and he was collecting comic books. I mean, before Avengers Endgame, he had all that shit. He had. I remember I was looking through his character cards one day, and I was like, "There's Ego, the Living Planet, there's Galactus, all those fantasy characters from Marvel were there." I think he had some rare fucking Superman or Batman. It was like straight out of 1939. I don't know if it was Batman or Superman #1, but it was fucking really rare. And I was like, dude, that is so crazy. I mean, he bought comic books all the time, dude. And it's not like he flipped through them and then threw them around. He kept them like in like these very well taken care of boxes. And so it's not like it was half-assed. It was like a really great job, like what he did. He like kept all the comics like in these boxes, and they were pristine. It was really great. It was really good, collecting. And so these are some guys over here. So yeah, I was super impressed that he had all that. He let me see, he was like, cool, I got this, rare Batman and stuff. And so it wasn't like sometimes when people are bragging about their shit, like, oh, my cousin has this job, or my uncle has this amount of money and stuff. It gets kind of lame. But in this case, he wasn't really gloating. He was just like, hey, look, check out my collection. And I was like, oh wow, it's like pretty cool. Pretty cool collection, dude. So then, I mean, it was all that, like the Infinity War saga. I mean, he had all the shit. Before Iron Man, Marvel Cinematic Universe, before any of that shit, man, he was all about all that Stan Lee, Marvel Comics, DC Comics. I mean, he had it all. So I'm kind of wondering, since he has all that stuff, does he like? So I was kind of wondering, okay, does he have all that stuff, and like, does he still have the collection? Does he save all his, comics, or did he sell them? Or I honestly, since he's kind of a weird guy, I don't think that he has a wife or kids or anything. His dad probably sold that bar. I'm not saying he's just like a weird guy that just lives by himself and just, he's still the same. But I mean, he might have went to jail. He might have, did a lot of darker stuff. I'm not sure. But I looked up his Facebook profile out of curiosity one day, and he just looked just like George, and just by himself, like normally, and there's nothing really remarkable about it. I don't know if I tried to make contact with him, just say, hey, what's up, man? Or something. Like, I was gonna ask him about his comic books, because that's what I was interested in the days of post Marvel, if he kept all this old, like he kept collected like a lot of rare comic books, a lot of vital issues. So yeah, pretty strange guy, but I mean, I could look the other way about something if some guy was 12 or 13 and they were interested in vampires or something. If he but if he became like the if he became like now, if he became like a priest in the Church of Satan or something, I'd be like, what? But if it's just moderate weirdness, I'm okay with it. If it's just your typical bullshit deviance, then I'm not. But if he's doing some heavy kind of shit, then obviously I'm not on board for that. Welcome to my world, biatch. Welcome to the world of the biatch. Damn it. Alright, guys. where we get revenge on this biatch. All right. Ah, shit. Oh, yeah. What? Oh, fuck, man. Shit. It's so close. So if it's just some like some geekiness, I kind of turn the other cheek. Now I know that just because you have an awesome comic book collection, even if it's really old and the pieces are still intact, I know it doesn't make you a millionaire always. I was just wondering what, you know, his worth of his collection was. If he's been collecting since he was 10 years old.
They'll be unable to conduct operations in action.
Oh, shit. That's a fucker again. And, alright, just commit suicide again.
You go on ahead, Joe. I'll secure the
Precisely. Alright, switch weapons. Nail him with this. See ya. Wouldn't want to free you. Oh, yeah. So George was weird, but not weird enough where you'd have to call the police. Just kind of gave off that vibe, though, a little bit.
going to be unable to fund the population financially.
We just had enough of that kind of Norman Bates vibe that could be a little bit uncomfortable if you didn't know who he was. We mostly went over George's place because he had Street Fighter 2 on Nintendo. And we did. George wasn't rich, but I mean, he did have stuff, you know. His dad did hook him up with the latest shit at the time. I guess you could measure wealth by. I mean, he lived in an apartment, but remember, apartments weren't really that expensive back in the day. Maybe they were $500 and $600 a month, which isn't cheap, even by today's standards. But they certainly weren't, you know, $1,400 a month or some shit like today's apartments. So. Though wages were lower, the cost of living was a lot lower too, and the dollar was quite strong. So like today, your wages would be down and your expenses would be way up. Back then, it was your pay was way up and your living expenses were down. Normal. Sorry. Kind of freaked me out. The AI was talking. I was like,
Without the interface and GPS, shit will not off station. Pull the plug on that. Now, please, just don't hurt me. What's true? Are you triggered?
there we go.
Are you triggered?
Okay. Well, I mean, even though I didn't talk to George on Facebook, you know, I hope he had a nice life, you know. His dad is probably dead by now. His dad was already old, and when I was 13, so his dad is most likely dead, if not in a nursing home or something like that. And I hope he still has that comic book collection. Throw this M-bomb on his man. Man, I think he's gonna. Is he gonna make it? Trigger the alarm. Oh, he did it. Shit. Motherfucker. Alright, that shit. Okay, so we got. Sweet potato. Where was that? Get my gun out of here, please. Can't have no fun without my gun. Pick up the shotgun. Ready to have some fun. Yo, I'm not done with my puns. So you can go have the run. Okay. All right. Hey, what's up, bud? Okay. Let's pick up my homeboy Elvis. You bastard. All right. No rest for the wicked. Money doesn't grow on trees. Oh, no gun. Clob is food. Straight up clob. Bob and clob, food. Just clob these foods. Ready to clob? Clob, food. That's recognized, food. Bust an ass. Better believe it, Holmes. You better not tell Sherlock either. Ooh. What's up, dog? Oh, he bitch slapped me. Bitch slapped me. Oh.
We'll meet up later. Or the other.
Gotcha. Oh. Blood painted on the walls. All right.
They'll be unable to conduct operations without any power.
Nice. Oh. All right. Fucking shit. Suicide again. Dude. My most dreaded level of all. My most hated level in Perfect Dark.
You go on ahead, Joe. I'll secure the perimeter.
Son of a bitch. I did not. Where's the guys? Huh. Turn it off sometimes. Okay, I never did that. Alright, so we I actually think that's funny because it's like one to another. Alright. Yeah. Go. Cover my ass. Build it, and they will come. Build it. All right. Nice try, hotshot. Can I finally get to go do what I'm supposed to do? Ah, here we go.
Or be unable to conduct operations actually power.
I wish I would have nailed him in the head. Alright. Slight minimal damage. No mercy. Not this time. Oh. You're gonna waste a bullet on me. Not worth it. Oh my god. This is fucking ridiculous. Right, so then we get the in-bomb. There we go. Yeah. Ah, nice pools of blood. You guys make a good team. All right. Got it. There we go. Sweet. Nail him here. Not laptop. Make sure no one snuck to the other side. Yo. Yeah. Okay. Any more N-bombs we got? We got. All right. Oh, that's Labyrinth. Labyrinth. The word of the mage, Labyrinth. Baby, I'm amazed at the way your maze is amazing. Baby, I'm afraid of the way I love you. Maybe I like a maze if I'm look all the time. What? Yeah. My brother. Got no more of these creepy crawlers around. Idea. All right, so we tried that. Oh, gotcha. Screw you, man. All right. There we go. Let's go ahead and bomb. Okay. Toy bomb, guys. Everything. Oh. Oh, shit. Well, let's just go ahead and nail. Shall we? big deal. Oh well.
Good afternoon to pilot of GPS. Ship for Wonderful Station.
No doubt.
Hold the plug on. Now, please, sit down, please. Waiter. Switch this thing off. I'll shut it down.
You'll meet your doom. Saucy. Alright, where are we at in the mission? We're almost out of life. Okay. We're almost dead, so that's not good. Never is good to be almost dead. Indeed. These Asian girls taste different than the other girls. Taste kind of good. Alright, did the objectives are okay, activate moon pool lift. Let's activate kick some people's ass. Let's activate ass kicking. Yes, sir. Can we activate ass kicking? Yes, sir. Activate ass kicking. For those hard to reach angles, try your sentry gun. Dead yet? Yeah. Ah! Okay. Hey, what's up? I didn't mean to crash your party, but oh shit, dude. Oh, these guys coming. All right. Not like the alarm was tripped. Oh my god. Down to the wire. It's still alive? Shit, dude,
What? Where are these guys coming from, man? Ridiculous. How are they coming? Wait for Elvis for this. Okay. No. The laptop. Angle it right there. So there's no ammo in that anyway. Okay. Barely got that one. So there we go. Well, kind of have to get Elvis now because there's no way to. Yeah, it gets more dramatic the closer I get to no life, the more dramatic it gets. All right, good. Okay, wait for this guy. Oh shit! No! Oh, oh man! Oh, losing for like 2 hours straight. Oh my god! Oh well. Welcome to punishment. Son of a batch of cookies. Son of a batch of cookies? Oh yeah. You know it, guys. Son of a batch. A batch of cookies. So this is a funny story. I was making some of my famous pot cookies one day, chocolate chip, and like my grandma was in town visiting, and I went to go run the dog to take a piss just real quick or something, and then my grandma thought I started cooking something and left and was gonna burn the house down or something. But in all reality, I just went to go take the dog to take a piss real quick. And so what she did was she got the weed cookies and she got on the hot pads and she got the cookies out. And then she came in and she's like, "Oh, I thought you were gonna burn. I thought you left it on and you forgot." And I was like, "No, that's not what happened. I went outside for a second and I was gonna come right back in, and but like." So my mom knew what I was doing, so she was all freaked out. She thought my grandma was gonna eat a weed cookie and get stoned. It would have been hilarious. Well, not for her. She probably was like, "What's going on?" She probably would have figured it out, Hey, I'm stoned. But you know, obviously she would have been pretty pissed. So that was the scare at the time. Grandma almost ate pot cookies. One guy was like an ex-boyfriend of my aunt, but he had already been drinking at like Whiskey River or whatever. So he came to visit our apartment, and he was already like drunk from being out at Whiskey River. So when he came at like 2 in the morning or whatever, it was sort of funny because you know what? Hell with it. Hey, so I laughed because when he was drunk, he goes, "Oh, you got chocolate chip cookies?" And then my mom was like, "Here, have some." And so he got like, so he was already drunk, and then he went home, and then like he made it home, but then the weed kicked in, and then he passed out. I just imagine him like getting sober, and then all of a sudden like he starts to get high, and then he fucking passes out. I just thought it was funny because when he was drunk, he was like, "Oh, cookie," you know, like, "Oh, this is good." People had no idea a lot of times. No, my what was the funniest high thing we ever did? Just me and my friends being stoned or whatever. I want to say the funniest time was, I want to say, when we went to Alice in Wonderland. So everybody knew I made weed cookies, all right? And so I worked at H-E-B, this grocery store chain in Texas. If you're not familiar, if you're not from Texas, if you don't know what it is. So it was founded by Herbert E. Butts. His last name is Butts, for real. Herbert E. Butts. So that's why they call it H-E-B. Most people call it H-E-B. Most people don't call it the Butts. That'd be like if you went to your grocery store, they'd be like, "Hey, I'm going to the ass." I bet you are. So this motley crew of dudes at the deli, I worked in a cafe, and it doesn't make me any better, you know what I'm saying? This level is fucking hard, dude. I guess I don't have the right appreciation for this, how tough this perfect agent mode is. Shit, man. So I had seen this movie called Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, with Johnny Depp. There's this big thing where they'd take all these like children's classics and they'd make these movies with Johnny Depp, and he'd play different characters. He'd be like, you know, the Mad Hatter, or he'd be Willy Wonka or something. And there was a habit of making the movies like really weird too, which was funny. I think it was funny. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There's a scene with these squirrels, and we weren't stoned, we weren't drunk or anything watching the movie, but it was just so bizarre. It was really funny actually. I mean, there's times where when Johnny Depp does work, and it's like it's really like weird, but like in a funny way. And then sometimes it's just like, oh, he's just trying to be really strange on purpose. But most of the time with a good script, he's kind of like the perfect actor to like balance, you know, hey, I'm a handsome stud GQ guy, and like, oh, I'm gonna be a weirdo though. He's like the perfect guy to like strike that balance of like cool handsomeness and like, you know, acting. So he's like perfect for that kind of stuff. So I'd seen with my buddies. We saw Willy Wonka. We saw Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and it was pretty funny. You know, there was no drinks, we did not smoke weed, there was no acid, we didn't do anything. It was just me and my friends got together and we watched the movie, and that was it. But for Alice in Wonderland #1, my friends and I wanted some herbal enhancements. So I made the pot cookies, and I gave people, you know, the little speech. I said, hey, look, this is going to be super fun, but what I need you to do something. Just have a little bit of it because this is a big cookie, and save the rest. And don't eat the whole thing, or you'll be so wasted you can't even move. You'll be what I call it there was songs. So one of my friends, he got one of my cookies, and I told him, hey, don't eat, you know, I always warn people, I say, don't eat the whole thing, eat a little bit of it and you'll get, you know, ripped. And but don't eat the whole thing because you're not going to be ripped, you're going to be zonked. You're going to be so stoned that you can't like get out of bed. And so Chris didn't follow those instructions. He ate the whole cookie, so then he was like angry at me because he couldn't get out of bed. And I was like, dude, I told you just to have a few bites, like have a third of it or something, save the rest. It's going to be pretty potent. These things are very, very potent. So I always give people that disclaimer before they buy it or eat it or whatever. So this shit's going to be strong, bro. So if you eat the whole cookie, you can't get out of bed. If you just have a third of it, you're going to have a great time. And you're going to have more for later, you know, whenever the time arises. How do you activate that? So I gave the same speech. Chris didn't listen, and he had a bad experience because he ate the whole thing. He go, dude, it was too much. It was too strong. And I was like, well, dude, I told you to just have a little bit. Don't eat the whole thing. So this big old ass fat guy, like, you know, you got people in the United States of America that are like obese everywhere, dude. Like people that just have eating disorders and shit. And this is one of those guys who was, 300, 400 pounds, and he just could not stop eating to save his life. So one of those big old fat motherfuckers, in American society. There's eat quadruple cheeseburgers and all that stuff. I feel like George Carlin, that comedian skit where he's like, "You got some fat motherfuckers walking around here." So we all went out, and then I told the guy, the big obese guy, I told John, I said, "Look, this shit's gonna be really strong, but it takes about 20 minutes to kick in. So what I want you to do is just have a third of it." But he goes, "Dude, I can't feel anything." And he kept eating the whole. And I was like, "Oh God, here we go." Another guy who's not listening. He's just like, "Dude, I can't feel it. I don't feel it." And it's like, man, you are going to feel it pretty soon. You're not going to regret your decision here. That fast, dude. Fuck, man. I'm gonna play this later. So he took the entire cookie. It didn't kick in, and then all of a sudden, Alice in Wonderland comes on, and it is really crazy. And we are fucking ripped. So when Alice in Wonderland goes down the rabbit hole, when she falls down the rabbit hole, it was like the shit kicked in, and we were fucking so baked. It might have been the funniest time because it literally freaked me out. Like when Alice went down the rabbit hole and she, spun down to the magical fantasy land. Oh my God, it tripped me out. But what really, really tripped me out though, when I was in that totally ripped state, was that in Alice in Wonderland they had a character called the Cheshire Cat, and I remember him from like school, from like the little kid days, little baby day, childhood, and I remember that character, but this was CGI, and it was like he'd go, "Hey, I'm here," and it was like he would vanish into a fucking vapor, and then he would like reappear. "Oh, I'm here, the Cheshire Cat." And I was like, "Oh, dude, this is like, we thought this was going to be a good idea, but this is like, no, man. Like if we were tripping on acid or something, this would be like, yeah. I mean, weed is, really strong weed is one thing, but like, I mean, if we were doing like anything more psychedelic than this, it would have been, it would have been game over, man. So at some point I just said, "Dude, this is just too intense for me." So I left after like an hour or something like that, because it was too nuts. And then the next day, John and all them were like, "Dude, that was too crazy." And I was like, "Yeah, I think we had the right idea." You know what I mean? We had the right idea, like, eat some pot brownies and go to Alice in Wonderland. I think we were, the idea itself was clever, but the actual what took place was not as not as wonderful as we thought it was going to be. So it was. I wouldn't say that experience was a disaster, but it certainly was a lot more intense than people were actually ready for. So that there's a few other stories that are pretty fun. I think me and my friend, we had a cookie and we went to Oz the Great and Powerful, and it was 3D and IMAX and everything. It was super fun, but we didn't really laugh. We kind of enjoyed the Oz the Great and Powerful high, the CGI and everything. It wasn't that great, but what we really enjoyed is that they had a Yogi Bear with Boo Boo trailer before that. We were laughing our ass off because it was like,
I'm smaller than your average bear, poo poo. And he's like, boo boo. We were, I mean, it was like we were dying laughing. I mean, I said, I looked at my friend, and my friend looked at me, and he said, dude, this is the movie that we need to see. We need to see Yogi Bear, like just fucking, baked. Um, I think Scoob is coming out soon. Can you imagine the amount of people like fogging up, getting ripped to Scooby Doo movies? Yeah, that Yogi Bear movie. Oh man, so it wasn't even the movie itself, Oz the Great and Powerful. It wasn't even really a good movie, and there were some kind of nice, CGI parts where they're going through the land of Oz and everything. But it's man. But I think Alice in Wonderland was too much. It was just too intense for the group there. That was kind of where we overextended our writ. We had crossed the threshold into uncharted territory, and it was extremely frightening. So I got blamed for it, because I'm the baker, because um, I was making the pot treats, so whoever is the maker, they get blamed for whatever goes wrong. But it's kind of feels good to make the pot treats though, because I know that people can't die, on it. In fact, they'll probably feel better. They'll probably have better blood pressure and stuff like that. So typically, unless they're really bad shape, they're not going to get sick and die. They're going to have a good time. They might have some anxiety or something like that because it's too intense. These magical fantasy, super creative worlds that we were embarking on, and sometimes it can be like an overload of sensation in a negative way, especially if it's sort of scary. Like Alice in Wonderland is sort of a children's story that's kind of like cool, but then there's a lot of things that are frightening about it, like disappearing cats. There's all sorts of like quantum physics stuff going on in there, and it's if you're not ready for like the world of the big, the shrinking down to the small and stuff, and you're really not, your perceptions aren't right, it's going to be like so would I go back and watch the movie sober? Probably not. It probably sucked. It probably blew ass. I would imagine. I mean, I remember seeing it, and I remember enjoying it. And the Red Queen and the Mad Johnny Depp plays another weird character called the Mad Hatter, and that's crazy. And I loved it. It was really, there was the Bunny Rabbit and the Big Small World and all that shit, man. It was very, very cool to be stoned watching that. Now sober, I probably would have been like, when is this shit gonna be over with, But ripped though, it was like Johnny Depp from Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. They were stoned, ripped, good people. Well, that kind of memory put me in a good mood. I'm gonna go take a walk and enjoy that. Enjoy some sunshine out there. I think I have enough hydrates. It's very hot outside, so there's gonna be a high calorie meal tonight, so I kind of want to go do some exercise. So peace. I'll be back later to celebrate Star Wars. The May the 4th be with you. I'm gonna play some. I'm gonna try to beat this level finally. Eventually, I think I'll get lucky. I'll be able to complete all the objectives, and finally, I'll get the big W. But I'm going to play just in celebration of the Star Wars Day. I'm going to play Star Wars: The Shadows of the Empire on Nintendo 64 a little bit, just to do that. So, anyways, I'll be back later.